Hi, my name is Deb Soros. I'm a clinical specialist with AlterG. Over the course of this video, we'll be reviewing all components of the Bionic Leg and how to make the most of it as a new tool in your current practice. At the conclusion of this training, you'll be able to safely apply and fit the Bionic Leg on patients, identify indications for use, clinically reason through patient and activity selection, and identify ways that the Bionic Leg can integrate into your current treatment sessions. Before we get into how to use the Bionic Leg, it's important that we spend some time discussing what the Bionic Leg actually is. The better this understanding, the easier it'll be for you to integrate the Bionic Leg into your treatment plans. The Bionic Leg is a tool used in therapy that allows therapists to challenge their patients to perform higher levels of repetition of upright activities. It's a robotic-assisted device activated by patient-initiated movement. In order to receive the assistance the Bionic Leg provides, patients must weight bear and initiate movement that is detected by a sensor placed in their shoe. The Bionic Leg sounds much more complicated than it actually is. It's a wearable device that provides motorized assistance in one direction on one joint. It essentially mimics the function of the quadricep. It provides assistance to knee extension and simulates natural eccentric control by providing resistance to knee flexion. How we use this added assistance and stability is where the Bionic Leg can really become a valuable tool in your practice. The Bionic Leg should be viewed not as a piece of super advanced technology that performs only a specific certain function when patients are using it, but more as a strengthening or facilitatory tool. It's a device that we as clinicians integrate into our current treatment methods that allow us to challenge patients with higher level therapeutic activities, ultimately leading to quicker gains. Here's an example. You're currently treating a patient who suffered a CVA with resulting left hemiparesis. The patient avoids any weight bearing or weight shifting towards the affected side, making his sit-to-stands asymmetrical. By using the Bionic Leg, the patient will now have to engage the paretic limb. They'll need to weight shift a certain percentage of body weight through that side before the Bionic Leg will engage and assist them to come into an upright standing position. We now have a tool that allows us to challenge our patients to really engage that paretic limb during all types of functional activities, including sit-to-stands. The Bionic Leg will help patients learn intrinsically how to engage that paretic limb. It also allows you, the clinician, to facilitate this movement versus having to assist. The more repetitions a patient performs utilizing the weaker side during an activity like a sit-to-stand, the better the carryover will be when the device is then taken off. The Bionic Leg can be used across the continuum of care, from inpatient rehab through home care. As the patient improves, the activities and parameters are adjusted so the patient receives an appropriate challenge and the device is never providing too much assistance. Any patient that has lower extremity weakness, poor stance control, poor standing tolerance may benefit from the Bionic Leg. As long as they have sufficient trunk control, some muscle activation of the quadricep, and are appropriate to begin working on upright functional activities, they may be a candidate. Diagnoses typically range from CVA, incomplete spinal cord injury, amputee, MS, to joint replacement patients and general deconditioning. We'll be reviewing the contraindications later on in the training. As you begin to start using the Bionic Leg, you'll find how easy it is to integrate into what you're currently doing. Patients now have a device that not only challenges them to use the weaker limb, but also gives them a sense of confidence due to the stability that the Bionic Leg provides. As clinicians, it's really easy for us to provide assistance, but what we can't do is replicate that natural eccentric control that so many patients lack. By having this extra stability, it allows us to change our positioning from a guarding one to one where we can facilitate better quality of movement, focusing on areas such as the trunk and pelvis. We're going to spend the next few minutes to talk about how to clinically reason through patient and activity selection. One of the best ways to decide who's appropriate to use the Bionic Leg is to take a minute and think about all the patients currently on your caseload. If each of them presented to therapy today with just a minimal increase in their quad strength, what activities would you be able to perform with them now that you couldn't earlier? The Bionic Leg will simulate that increased quad strength so that you can challenge your patients with these activities earlier, driving increased motor recovery for your patients. For some patients, this might mean beginning to work on reciprocal stair climbing. For others, it could be starting pre-gait activities versus static standing ones. It could also mean initiating sit-to-stands from a lower surface or step-ups to develop more quad strength and control. Each patient will have a unique treatment plan depending on their current status and goals. As you can see from the activities that we just mentioned, there are no special bionic leg exercises. By using the bionic leg, you'll be able to perform more repetition of your current exercises or the next level of them earlier.
Hi everyone, I'm Dan and I'm going to go over the components that come in your Bionic Leg kit. So to get started, I want to talk about the 2 rechargeable batteries that come with the device. The batteries completely charge in about 45 minutes, and they last in the device for between 1 and 2 hours of use, depending on how hard you're driving the motors. So that said, if you keep one battery in the charger and another one in the device, you should always have a fully charged battery ready to go. So once we have a charged battery, we're going to place that in the device like this, and this battery door really only closes fully if the battery is properly seated. So then we have the Bionic Leg itself. The device weighs about 8 pounds and fits right or left leg. Now it'll fit most of your patients, but not all of them, depending on height and weight. So this is going to fit patients who are between roughly 5 feet tall and 100 pounds in weight, all the way up to patients who are 6.5 feet tall and up to 300 pounds in weight. The next component we have are the foot sensors. You've got 4 different sizes of left and right. So you're going to select the appropriate size foot sensor for your patient. We'll go over that in a little more detail when we discuss donning the device. But I'd like to let you know that in a pinch, if you need to, you can always reverse a left or right and make it fit the opposite side. And lastly, we have 2 sets of ankle straps that come with the device, and this helps anchor the device to the foot sensor and keep it in place. Next, we're going to talk about donning the device. So the device is always donned with the patient in a seated position. If your patient is unable to sit unsupported at all, that's a pretty good indicator that they lack the trunk stability required to be appropriate for use of the device. So that said, I want my patient in a 90-90 position at the hip and knee, or as close as I can get them to it. Ideally, I'm going to transfer someone to the mat so I have a good firm surface to work from. If they can't transfer to the mat, or it doesn't prove practical to do that, I want to at least remove the arms of the wheelchair so I have good access to that side of my patient. So now we're going to talk about selecting the proper foot sensor. So what I want to do is take the appropriate right or left size sensor and match that up against the patient's foot or shoe. So you can see here I have the large foot sensor, and that's not going to fit flat in her shoe. What's important here is that the sensor fits flat and isn't rolled or bunched up within the shoe, so I have good contact between the patient's foot and the foot sensor here. So I've determined that the large is too big in this case. I'm always just going to drop down a size and go to my medium. And then I can double check by inserting it into the shoe and again making sure that that sensor fits flat along the footbed of the shoe. So once I have the right size foot sensor, I'm actually going to lay it flat because I want to put these 2 ankle straps on either side. So I'm going to space these out about a 3-finger space out. But that amount of spacing depends on how large my patient and their foot is, because you can see that's going to form a cuff around the ankle, and I want to make sure I've got room for full range of motion at the ankle. And once I've done that and placed the ankle straps on the foot sensor, I'm going to insert it back into the shoe, again so that foot sensor is flat inside the shoe, and put the shoe back on the patient. All right, so once we've put the patient's shoe with the sensor in it back on, I want to secure the ankle straps. One thing you always want to make sure is to pull the pant leg down as far as possible so we don't leave any slack in the material that might help the device move around a little bit on the patient's leg. So once I've done that, the ankle strap actually becomes a useful device to keep the pant leg in place and out of my way. So now I'm going to take the device itself, and I just have all of the Velcro sections opened up, and these BOA reels are popped out so there's no tension on any of the cables. I'm going to take the device and place it over her leg here on the thigh, keeping in mind that I want it to sit as proximally as I can on the patient's leg. So once I've got the device on the patient's leg, I'm going to adjust for leg length at the lower leg portion of the device. So you'll see this quick release knob here that allows me to adjust again for leg length, but also any angle I see at the knee. Now, typically, I want to shorten the device up so that I make sure I've got room for full range of motion at the ankle. I would tend to err on the side of being a little bit short, but it's actually not too critical as long as she's got room for full range of motion. I'm just going to tighten that up. The next thing I want to do is make sure the data cable is connected to the foot sensor here. So I'm going to make sure that plugs in. It's nice and secure. And now I'm ready to begin tightening the Velcro straps. I'm going to use this knee strap here to anchor the device in place. So that mates with Velcro on the underside of the frame here. And then I can take this tensioning strap and just leave it in place there until I want to come back and tighten that lastly. Moving on to the lower leg section here, you'll notice there are two hard tibial stays on either side of the lower leg. I want to take the piece that's attached to the fabric strap and get good tibial alignment and make sure that mates nicely with the Velcro on the ankle straps. I'm then going to wrap the fabric strap tightly around the back of the leg and then pull the opposite tibial stay again so that's snug and nicely aligned with the middle of the lower leg and the Velcro on the ankle strap. And now I'm ready to start tightening these cables by pulling the tensioning strap around to the back and securing it to the Velcro here. So now I'm going to move to the upper section of the leg here. Similarly, I want to secure the fabric strap around the back of the leg and take out as much of the slack in that as I can. I can also just fold this over depending on the patient's leg size here. So either way is fine. I get good Velcro attachment here. I want to point out the BOA knobs here at this point. These pop in and out. If they're in, there's no slack, no ability to slack the cables here. So when I'm tightening this tensioning strap, I want to make sure that these knobs are released so I can take up all the slack in these cables that I can and then secure the tensioning strap on the underside of the leg here. Now I can move to tensioning these cables further by popping in all three of these knobs. You'll notice there's a red indicator showing when the knobs are popped out and not developing any tension. When they pop in, you can no longer see that red indicator, and these will tighten up nicely.
There's a quick start guide on the upper portion of the Bionic Leg, which lists the settings, their definitions, as well as a reference starting point broken up into patient assist levels. We're going to now move on to the settings and how to input them. The parameters are used to ensure that the appropriate challenge and level of assistance is provided to your patient. Let's define the parameters first. Assistance reflects the amount of assistance or help that the Bionic Leg provides during knee extension. Resistance reflects how much resistance the Bionic Leg provides during knee flexion, simulating that natural eccentric control. Threshold is a percentage of body weight needed to activate the device. The sensor that was placed in the shoe will detect that a certain percentage of body weight was placed through it before the device will be activated. The fourth parameter is assist cutoff. The Bionic Leg will assist a patient through full knee extension. Assist cutoff allows us to control the point at which the device will stop assisting patients who may not have full available range. We're now going to move on to how to actually use the software on the Bionic Leg. We'll start with just turning the device on and off. There's a hard on and off switch at the top of the device. Once you switch it to the on side, you can now press the power button to start the device. You can also choose to turn the device on prior to putting it on the patient's leg, since it takes about 10 seconds to boot up. Once the boot up is complete, we can now move on to inputting the patient settings. You'll see that there's an icon that looks like a gear. If you press the button below it, it'll bring us to the first screen where we can start putting these settings in. The first thing the device asks us for is to input the patient's body weight. Remember that threshold is a percentage of the patient's body weight needed to activate the device, so we need to put the patient's body weight in. We can do it in increments of 10, so just round to the nearest number. Once you've put in the patient's body weight, we're going to press the arrow to the right to cycle through the next settings. The first parameter it shows us is assistance. The icon shows arrows pointing in the same direction as the lifting force is applied. We would adjust the amount of assistance to reflect how much work the patient is doing versus how much work the device is doing. If I increase the assistance to, let's say, 50%, we can assume that the patient is performing 50% of this activity and the device is performing the other 50%. Patients who have difficulty standing from a seated position will require a high amount of assistance. If it's a patient that you just want some facilitation for that movement, you can keep the assistance at low. If I press the arrow again to the right, I see icons that represent resistance. Remember, this is the amount of resistance that the device will provide during knee flexion. For example, if a patient was standing coming to a seated position. We can set the device at low, medium, or high amounts of resistance, which reflect to the numbers 1, 2, or 3. If a patient is very weak and is at risk for buckling during an upright standing activity, I would put the resistance at 3 to provide the maximum amount of stability for that activity. The next setting is threshold. You can see that the icon actually highlights the insole in the shoe, and the arrows are pointing down in the same direction that the patient would be weight bearing. Remember that threshold is a percentage of body weight that's going to be needed to activate the device. If a patient is very weak or is unable to initiate weight shift through the affected side, you would keep the threshold at low. We don't want to put the threshold too high where the patient will be unable to trigger the assistance. We also don't want to put it too low so that the patient doesn't meet it too early in their sit to stand. If I press the arrow to the right again, you can see that now we've reached assist cutoff. The icon represents an angle, which reflects the amount of degrees shy of full extension in which the assist will cut off. For example, if your patient was lacking 10 degrees of knee extension, you would set the assist cutoff to 10, and the device would stop assisting at that point. Once I have those 4 settings put in, if I press the right arrow one more time, I see a summary of all the settings that I have input. There's a green check mark in the upper right corner, and if I press that, that will accept all the settings and move on to the next screen. Once I am in this screen, I have 2 options. If there are any last-minute settings I would like to change, I can press the settings icon. If not, I can put the device in active mode by pressing the start button. Once a device is in active mode, it will wait to feel that certain threshold met through the sensor before it will engage.
Okay.
Once the patient is upright, we can now tap into that resistance and stability that the device provides. Whether through weight shifting onto the affected side, we can see the resistance setting as the patient comes from a standing to a seated position. The device is providing that nice natural eccentric control throughout the range of motion until they come to a seated position. We mentioned earlier that one of the benefits of the Bionic Leg is the confidence and stability the device provides, not only to the patient, but to ourselves as clinicians. Typically, if I was to get my patient standing, I'd have to position myself in a position of guarding, most likely blocking that knee with passive extension as they came into an upright position to prevent them from buckling. With the Bionic Leg on, I can now change my positioning to one where I'm facilitating movement versus just passively blocking them.
And as the patient, I can feel a lot more stability on this side. So the device is providing some mechanical stability as well as that resistance to knee flexion. So normally I tend to not shift weight onto the affected side, but now when I do that, all of a sudden that leg is stabilized or even actively engaged here. So that allows me to gain more confidence in shifting weight onto this side that I might otherwise be able to do. Much of the application clinically for the Bionic Leg is in pre-gait activities, transfers, weight shift, balance activities. It is, however, appropriate for some patients to work on gait, and what the device does in gait primarily is stabilize the stance phase. So you can see, I'll demonstrate a little bit of what a lot of patients with weakness on one side, inability to shift weight onto that side, they don't keep their weight here, so they're taking a quick, short step 2 stride with the unaffected side. Adding the bionic leg and giving me that stability on the left side allows me to work on getting better weight transfer to the left, keeping my weight there, and now progressing to a longer step-through stride on the uninvolved side. Okay.
When the patient comes to a seated position, it's important to press the pause button once they sit so that they don't accidentally meet that threshold as they may be changing their position in the chair. There are two ways to take the device off. Prior to removing the device, it's important to remove the tension from the boas, as well as disconnecting the foot sensor from the bionic leg. At this point, I can either undo the Velcro that I did to put the device on, or the preferred method is a quick release. There are zippers on the inside of the device opposite the boas that you can just unzipper to take the entire device off. Once the zippers are undone, I can then lift the device off the patient's leg, unsecuring it from the ankle straps. Once the device is off the patient, before you use it with the next patient, you'll have to secure each of the 3 zippers. Here is a list of the contraindications and precautions. For further information, including troubleshooting tips, clinical references, and case studies, refer to the user training manual and the AlterG website. Thanks so much for your participation and time.